The city of Seattle refuses to help small landlords who lost thousands during the eviction moratoriums. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of Seattle, Washington. Now, as I've explained many times, Seattle is one of the most progressive anti-landlord places in the entire country. They've passed so many rules and so many regulations that landlords can barely operate their own businesses without breaking some law. Okay, so it's absolutely insane up there. And there's a lot of landlords who lost a ton of money due to those eviction protections that they put in place for tenants. So all these landlords want to do is recover their money, and some of them just want to get completely out of the landlord business because it's just not worth it for them anymore. And they still are stuck in this horrible limbo. Okay, and it's a bad situation to be placed in, and I feel for the people up there who thought that, hey, I'm going to be a real estate investor here in the city, and then they got screwed over. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think, okay? If you were a landlord right now up in the Seattle, Washington area, right? What would you do? Okay, would you sell your property, get out of the landlord business completely? Would you continue to operate there? I mean, I admit the appreciation, the increase in property values has been great. So if you are an appreciation based investor and you're willing to deal with all this, I'm sure you made a lot of money. But in my opinion, I don't think it's worth the headaches. Not the headaches of dealing with the tenants who know that they have more rights than you do, and not the headaches of dealing with the city who thinks that you are the enemy somehow, okay? So this article is coming from seattlemedium.com, and it says, small landlords in limbo as rental assistance wraps up. Yeah, and this article is good because it shows the perspective of landlords up there in Seattle and what they're dealing with. So let's get into it. Ada owns a rental home in Lake City, which she said she leased at below market rates to the current renter when she temporarily moved out of state for work before the pandemic. I was providing affordable housing, Ada said, who asked that her last name not be published to preserve her privacy. I was not in it to make a profit. My tenant didn't have a great credit score, and I was able to overlook that and say, hey, you seem like a good person. You seem like you need a chance and a place to live. Let me give you a rental. When the city of Seattle instituted a series of eviction moratoriums from March 2020 until February of this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Ada said her tenant stopped paying rent. Yeah, don't be surprised that tenants are going to be taking advantage of this sort of situation, right? And all of the good things that you did to help this person out, overlooking the bad credit history and, trying to keep the place affordable for them, well, you were only screwing yourself, okay? That's why when people ask me, why are you always so consistent with why can't you just give me a break? Well, I can't give you a break because I don't trust you. Okay, I don't trust you, and I don't trust that the government is going to always allow me to, operate the business that I am right now. So I have to do things efficiently. I have to play by the same set of rules for everybody. I can't give you a break and then screw myself over in the future. That's not going to happen, okay? While the city and King County have rental assistance programs for people who lost their jobs due to the pandemic, Ada said her tenant did not apply for the program. Her efforts to communicate with the tenant about applying for rental assistance have failed. She has tried to inspect her property, but the renter has refused to let her into the house and has displayed erratic behavior. She said the tenant owes nearly $50,000 in back rent, but she doesn't expect to ever see that money. Ada is just one of the many small landlords who have fallen through the cracks of the rental assistance programs that were supposed to help landlords maintain their properties when local governments instituted blanket eviction bans. And what that really goes back to is the fact that they required the tenant to be part of the application process in order to get the rental assistance, right? They wouldn't just allow the landlord to say, hey, my tenant isn't paying, my tenant is struggling right now, please reimburse me the rental assistance so that I can keep this tenant in there. No, instead, they said, well, if the tenant doesn't apply, the landlord gets nothing. And that's a big problem. That's one of the biggest problems I had with the rental assistance program. A lot of tenants, they're like this tenant here of this lady, and they just weren't willing to cooperate. And that just left the landlord screwed, especially in a place like Seattle where they wouldn't allow anyone to get evicted. Okay? So it didn't matter if the person deserved the protections from the eviction moratorium or not, if they actually lost their job or not, because they just got protection and they got to stay in there as long as they wanted to, and the city of Seattle was backing them up and not this landlord, not this property owner. The eviction moratoriums helped thousands, and that's what it says in the article, but I don't agree with that. But anyway, let's continue. As thousands of jobs were eliminated at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, Washington state and local governments enacted eviction moratoriums to help people, especially low-income and communities of color, remain housed when workers lost all or part of their incomes. But the eviction bans didn't mean renters were not responsible for the rent, and they would eventually have to pay the accumulated rent to their landlords. The rental assistance programs administered by King County and the City of Seattle, funded by the federal, state, and local governments, were supposed to do just that, pay the tenants' rent directly to landlords. The programs required the tenants' and landlords' cooperation. Now, Seattle area small landlords like Ada say they have been swept into a system that has tied their hands and saddled them with a difficult to navigate process to receive rental assistance through King County or the City of Seattle. In her case, because her tenant has refused to communicate or cooperate with her, she is stuck. The city's moratorium also forbade landlords from shutting off utilities. Ada said the utilities remained under her name, but the tenant has not paid them since 2020. She continues to pay them, so her credit won't take a hit, she said. Wow. Okay, so now we're not just talking about the $50,000 in lost rent this lady has suffered, okay? She's been paying these people's utilities for 2 years. Okay, they owe her thousands more on top of the lost rent. That's how crazy this is. Okay, basically, you're going to work every day. You're working your butt off so that you can pay to keep somebody else in this house for free. That's what you're doing. You know how stupid that sounds? I mean, you have basically become a homeless shelter for the crappy tenants inside your property, and you can't do anything about it according to the city of Seattle unless you want your property taken from you, your credit destroyed, your finances ruined, okay? You don't pay your utility bills. They hit your credit. They don't hit the tenant's credit. That's how bad this is. And yet, they think landlords are being mean when they say, hey, we just want to evict. Well, guess what? Eviction is what this tenant deserves at this point. The eviction moratorium has essentially painted me as a corporate landlord, or just someone who is able to absorb a loss of 2+ years for a tenant who is not paying, Ada said. I'm just trapped in the eviction moratorium, and the city doesn't want to listen to me. Now that the eviction moratorium is over, Ada said she has started the judicial process so she can regain custody of her house, but it's likely to take months because the courts are backed up. Meanwhile, she's still paying property taxes. As a good landlord, I have to uphold my responsibilities for a contract, but the tenant doesn't have to, Ada said, so I can't go to court. But they want me to pay property taxes? Can you believe that? Okay, there was no moratorium on property taxes. Hey, what's the deal with that, okay? Hey, you're not going to be able to take any rent. You're not going to be able to accept any rent from the tenant. You can't evict them. You can't get rid of them. You just have to take the loss. You have to keep paying your utility bills. But hey, well, where's our tax money at? They can go stick it up their butts, okay? The city of Seattle is so full of garbage, okay? A lot of cities were acting like this too, and it's frustrating reading about this, and I really feel for this lady, And as a small landlord, she might not have known just how many tenant protections there were in place in the city even before the eviction moratoriums were put into place. Because if she had, she might have said, hey, I'm not even going to rent this place out. I'm just going to sell it before the moratoriums even started. So now she's going through a months-long process. The eviction moratorium in Seattle just ended in February, so it's only been a few months, but it's going to take months more before she goes to court and she's able to actually get these tenants out of there. And you know, fortunately, she hasn't lost her property yet, but, you know, how much is she going to lose overall? You know, 70, 80, $100,000 perhaps. And maybe the tenant trashed the place too on top of that. I mean, this is awful. This is absolutely awful. And this is the situation that landlords were put in because of these cities who decided they wanted to take away property rights and basically turn everything into this ridiculous socialist system. Okay? This is why I'm against socialism. This is why I'm against government having too much power. This is why they need to be looking at the Constitution, and throwing these ridiculous eviction moratoriums out permanently. So, yeah, there's another story in this, but it's more of the same. Basically, the city of Seattle and all of these cities that had these eviction moratoriums in place screwed the small mom and pop landlords over and forced us to become the affordable housing providers and the homeless shelters for these horrible tenants who need to pay their own bills.